Tell him I got the juice.
If we're going to take the route of using our singleness to dive into promiscuous activity, these are things that we have to take into consideration, because we aren't just going to get to a place where the light is going to flip automatically and all of a sudden we're going to go from polygamous to monogamous, and we're all of a sudden going to go from chilling with multiple people to just one person and being committed to that, and thinking that there isn't going to be a fight like at that space.
Realize that and think, especially young men,
Mhm.
that the goal is that's that's the tunnel vision goal,
Right.
is to have sex with a lot of women. Like that's what we need to
Let me
do.
know if y'all can
And
hear
so
that.
I don't know if you've ever thought about what happens from a brain chemistry standpoint when you have something as high, something with as extreme of a dopamine response as when that becomes your primary driving factor of what you're trying to accomplish. And say you accomplish that repeatedly over years, and say over 5 years, your goal is to meet as many women and have as many women as possible. But that's the end of the goal. Like, I want to meet women, I want to learn how to engage with women, I want to women.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing is you're training your brain from a you can't get past this. It's this. You could replace this with anything. You replace it with cocaine. You can replace it with any addictive behavior of what happens in the brain. It's going to imprint on your brain that behavior, that when you engage in that behavior and that pursuit, you're going to get this big, once you finally achieve it, this big dopamine spike, big.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to get a big dopamine crash below baseline. And over time, what you're doing is you're training your brain, and you really, at some point, it's more subconscious than anything else, that is the pursuit that you must engage in to get that feeling, whatever you want to call it, that feeling of accomplishment, of what you would think is happiness, which is not happiness. It's fleeting happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But that becomes then the pattern that is imprinted on your brain. And to get out of that I'm talking about neural pathways that bond very strongly. And to get out of that, you have to physically rewire your brain.
Okay. So what he just explained in all of that is, you're training your body and your brain to respond a certain way. Once you hit that dopamine, it's hitting up, and then it's a dip, it's a huge crash, right? And you're going to continue to hit that and continue to do that. And what you're training your body for is that is the pursuit. And so you're going to be looking for that pursuit in other areas. And you don't have to just talk about sexual activity. We can talk about other things too, right? Food addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions, all those kinds of things. Addictions. It always strikes that dopamine, right? And your body is so used to craving that. So when you get into that space, right? Not only is it going to be harder than it ever felt like it has been, it's going to feel harder to remain committed. You're so used to having all this access. You're so used to having all these options. You're so used to having all this different stuff that you don't know really how to operate now that you're in a monogamous setup. And statistically, scientifically, we can see why. Because your brain has created neural pathways and bonds and all that, like literally all that. And it takes eons for your brain to rewire. It takes forever for you to come out of those spaces and come into places that are more healthy and representative of the marriage and relationship you desire. So where do we go with this information? Right? So if I'm engaging in all of this promiscuous activity, and in the process of that, for whatever reason that I'm doing it, my brain is being rewired to where that is something that not only I'm going to expect potentially in my marriage, but it's something that I feel I need in order to experience something that, as he mentioned, is fleeting. Where do we go? What am I supposed to do with all of this? Right? What am I supposed to do with all this? And the first thing I want to tell you, of course, in reacting to this, and then of course they also give their responses to it, and it's more so of the same thing. Like, if you follow Fresh and Fit, if you follow a lot of red pill people, they'll tell you, hey, we just need to acclimate to the times, right? Like, that's where we're at. We just need to acclimate to the times. We need to be willing to just adjust. It is what it is. We're just taking the information as we get it, and we just need to go with it. But truth is, like, fighting fire with fire has never made anything better. You know what I'm saying? Responding that way has never made things better. Right. And even though I may not be able to control what others are doing, that doesn't mean I have to also match that energy in order to get what I'm looking for. So the question, where do we go now, is, okay, now that we know this information, and if you're in that process, this is something you've experienced, you're currently experiencing. Listen, again, this is not condemnation. I am not trying to tell you that you have no chance of getting married. No, I actually do believe that because God is who he says he is, restoration is available, and is, mercy, grace, all those things that is available to you just as much as it's available to me. So your number of partners doesn't necessarily automatically mean that a marriage is out of your future. What I am saying though is that statistically, who we can see, just statistically, we have not even traveled and hit anything in scripture yet. But you know what I'm saying, what I just said statistically, doing things God's way makes sense. So if that is the case, then what we ought to do with the horniness and attractions and all those things that we experience in our singleness is learn to have self control. If you are an individual who desires to have a marriage and desires to build a family, your greatest challenge as a single individual in this culture with so much access available to you at hand, TikTok, Instagram, free access, all these kinds of things. Your challenge is to be under self-control, is to gain self-control. How do we do this? In connection and relationship to Christ, first and foremost, allowing him to be our foundation. Don't take the red pill, take the God pill. How about that? Right? But outside of that, now we also have to get applicable. Well, that doesn't mean I don't get horny anymore because I believe in Jesus and I follow him. No, I definitely still have it. And matter of fact, maybe you were in a previous relationship where you did have physical connection to that degree. So now your body is low key potentially on a schedule. You just came out of a long relationship and you're like,
Yo, I hear you, but bro, like my body is craving some stuff right now. Like, this is typically the day, an hour, which I get it. I kind of need that.
as challenging as it is, we have to be willing to put ourselves, it's going to be a process first and foremost. I have to tell you that. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a process that is worth going through and journeying through, but it is going to be a process and you're going to battle and you're going to fight and you're going to have a lot of those urges. We have to find something that's going to replace it. Honestly, in the horniness and stuff that we feel, y'all, it's energy, and it's energy that we can take and transfer it somewhere else. So like, again, if you zoomed in on it long enough, you'll probably find yourself in a position where you're going to say fluff it and go for it. But if I took that same energy that I'm having in the horniness and I transfer it to maybe some physical exercise, I went on a walk, I did some push-ups, you're right, like I went to the gym. Okay. You can't stay horny that long. I don't know if y'all noticed that. Like you can't. There's no way. There's absolutely no way that you're going to stay horny that long. So you got to put yourself in positions to where you're going to say, "Yo, yes, this is what I feel. I'm attracted. This is it." And I want to be able to make the adjustments and transfer this energy someplace else to where I'm not giving way to this attraction that I'm feeling, right? Because I know that being abstinent, abstinence, all that good stuff, I need to stay there, right? Not only to honor myself, but to honor my future spouse in the process. So, what we do with our horniness and our singleness, with all of this information, is practice self control, practice abstinence. Look at this season as an opportunity to say, yo, I have such a phenomenal chance here to be prepared and prepare myself, right? Not just for the covenant that I'm going to walk into with someone else, but also prepare myself to remain in self-control. Man, remain in self-control. Now, there's so many stories and so many people that we could probably talk about who, man, you know what? It's possible that they did all this and they still cheated. They still committed adultery. They still stepped outside their marriage. 1000%. Again, I'm not trying to paint this as like, if you do this, there's no way that you're going to be tempted and you're going to cheat and you're all, no, like there's so much nuance in the wisdom and in the self-control and the habits and the disciplines that we develop as individuals to prepare us for where we're trying to go and the relationships we're trying to create. All I'm telling you is that in order to maximize your singleness, it's not going to happen by you raising your body count, because a lot of the people that I've talked to, okay, now there's only few that haven't shared these things, but a lot of the people that I've talked to, they ultimately have a desire to be married. They ultimately have a lot of motivations that tell them, hey, I don't want to die alone. Now, again, whether or not that's a motivation that maybe is worth carrying, we can talk about that another time. What I am telling you is that there are people who are want to settle down. The biggest issue that you have in looking to that to settle down and trying to use your earlier years to get all of it out of your system is you're not actually getting it all out of your system. You're programming your body to want and need that dopamine high hit in order to reach a place of satisfaction. So let me tell you what happens when you walk into the relationship and you walk into the marriage and this person doesn't get you there. you now devalue that person, you devalue the relationship, you devalue the connection. And if you're in a marriage, you possibly even devalue the sex that takes place in the marriage. And now you're trying to compare that person to other people you've been with. And now you're minimizing her, you're minimizing him if you're a lady, and you're minimizing the entire relationship. Now here we are at the divorce table, because that's one of many ways that starts, along with so many other things. It's a train wreck that awaits you, right? And I think what we have to be willing to do is be willing to accept the responsibility of owning disciplinary habits in order to maintain our purity, not just for the sake of saying we did it, but because we understand the purposes behind it, the person we want to be with, and how we want to honor our marriage and even our family later on down the line. Listen, again, I'm not telling you that if you've already done it, you're out of luck. No, you're not. You still can be married. You still can have a loving, long lasting marriage and relationship if you've already done these things and traveled down this road. My biggest thing to you is that if you're already here, my challenge to you is to just stop. That's like the biggest, that's the hardest, but it's the challenge to stop. Because now we understand that, man, okay, maybe I'm not actually doing myself as much of a service as I thought I was. So now I think I need to just remain abstinent, stop, and gain self control in order to honor the marriage and relationship I have. That's what singleness is for, not to explore our bodies and to feel. And there's a lot of things behind it, y'all. Like, again, there's so much that we could talk about. There's so many people that feel like they're in fear of missing out. They're in fear of not experiencing their sexuality. They're in fear of, man, what if there was something better out there, something bigger, whatever it could have been. And I'm telling you, man, that is one of the tricks of the enemy, comparison. And so we fall into that trap, and a lot of stuff is programming our minds to feel that way. We can look at the movie scenes. We can look at all these different things, social media, that, again, all these messages that people are putting out here that are telling you, hey, acclimate to the times. You need to be willing to do this, do that. No, I'm telling you, don't acclimate to the times. Don't allow the current environment setting to dictate to you not only how you ought to move, but what's most beneficial and impactful for where you're trying to go. Just because so many people statistically are out here having premaritally doesn't mean that you have to join in on the fun. This clip is from one of my recent YouTube live streams. You can come over and check out when we go live, typically once a week. Find your boy, subscribe, turn on the post notifications so you don't miss when we're going live and all that we've got going on over on this channel. All right, peace.